Before we get started, we'd like to thank Allianz Trade for sponsoring this episode of Let's Get Surety. Allianz Trade is the trademark used to designate a range of services provided by Euler Hermes. Euler Hermes is the global leader in trade credit insurance and a recognized specialist in the areas of surety, collections, structured trade credit, and political risk. For more information on Allianz Trade, Surety, visit their website referenced in the description. Now, on to our show.
You're listening to Let's Get Surety. Let me hear your bonding talk with Kat Shamapande.
Hey everyone, it's Kat Shamapande. Thanks so much for joining us for this episode of Let's Get Surety. Today I have with me my co-host Mark McCallum, CEO of NASBP. Hey Mark.
Hi Kat, it's great to be here. I'm really excited about the panel of experts that we have today. Really some of the foremost leaders in the industry, and we get them all to ourselves to ask great questions.
We are here live at NASBP's 2022 Annual Meeting in Palm Desert, California, and we are so excited to have our panelists who just got down off the stage and have given us a little bit of extra time to talk to us about how we can be better together as we work together in various industries. So I just want to introduce who we've got with us today. Tom Borgia, CFO and shareholder for J. Raymond Construction Corporation. Hey, Tom, thanks for being on.
Hi, Kat. How are you?
Good.
Tom Borgia with CFMA, so Construction Financial Management Association. I'm currently the chair and also CFO and shareholder of J. Raymond Construction. We do commercial retail throughout the Southeast.
We also have with us Dan Fordice III, Vice President of Fordice Construction Company and the incoming President of AGC of America. Thanks for being on with us, Dan.
Well, thanks for having me. Fordice Construction Company is a small, mainly heavy and civil construction company in Vicksburg, Mississippi. We do a lot of work for the Corps of Engineers up and down the Mississippi River. We also build bridges, and we have a small commercial building operation as well, operating mainly in just in Mississippi and Louisiana. Here today representing the Associated General Contractors of America, and not the incoming president anymore. I am the president as of a couple of weeks ago.
Sorry about that. Congratulations.
Well, thank you very much. And very proud to be here. This is a challenging time we've got ahead of us for the next 12 to 24 months. But I'm looking forward to it. And I think all of us that make it out the other side are going to be a lot better for it.
In addition to Tom and Dan, we also have Courtney Little, CEO and General Counsel for Ace Glass Construction and Centerline Systems Manufacturing Company, and past president of the American Subcontractors Association. Thanks so much for being on with us today, Courtney.
Hey, Kat, glad to be here. So I'm here representing the Subcontractors Association. Been a contractor for a number of years in Arkansas. Ace Glass does mostly vertical, larger buildings, hospitals, things like that. But here today, just trying to contribute to this industry. It's nice to be getting surety with this group, just to share what we're seeing out there and then figure out how we can work together to overcome some of the challenges that are in the market now.
That's great. Thank you. Also, we have with us today Nick McFayden, VP of Business Development at Procraft Construction and the 2022 chair of the ABC Southern California Board of Directors.
Hi, thanks for having me. Procraft Construction, we're a specialty contractor, plumbing, fire sprinklers, and utilities, primarily working in the public works space. We build a lot of educational facilities, K through 12, higher ed, university, as well as healthcare projects. And I am here today representing Associated Builders and Contractors of Southern California chapter, of which I chair for 22. And it's great to be involved and engaged. Thank you.
That's terrific. Thanks so much.
So you all represent very successful firms. And obviously, we're not out of the pandemic yet, but we've weathered 2 years, and a lot of unexpected things occurred, a lot of challenges. Could you each kind of frame what your companies did to kind of get through that period? And particularly if there is one particular action or decision that you made that really helped you push your company forward. And maybe I'll start with you, Dan.
Well, before I talk about my company, I'd like to talk about what AGC did real quick. They had the foresight to see immediately that that we had to make construction essential, or we weren't going to be able to continue to work. There were a lot of mayors and even some governors in the country that wanted to shut construction projects down. And AGC saw that and immediately went and fought very hard to get construction considered an essential service, and therefore we all continued to work for the next 2 years. So that was important. And then what AGC did after that was worked very hard toward making the work site safe for during COVID, and then also trying to work toward getting the employees vaccinated. We also fought very hard against federal mandated vaccines. We believe that the vaccine was the way to do it, but we don't believe that the federal government needs to mandate that. We had we self-perform almost everything that we do. It's all outside. Most of it is in small groups. They had, they ride together in the pickup trucks to get to work, and they all work together. The biggest thing we did was, pushed and not necessarily real successfully for the folks to get vaccinated when that was available, but also to wear the PPE, especially when they weren't outside and spread out, during the job the way that they normally are. So, when they're riding in the pickup truck and all, we ask that they wear masks. And if you had any kind of issues, symptoms at all, stay home, and we'll pay you to stay home. And I think that helped a lot. I quarantined 4 times because I had close encounters with people. I still have not gotten it. But one of our greatest fears was shutting down the whole office and not being able to function there with the payroll functions and everything else. So especially in the office of people that work right together. But, we ask everybody, if you have any symptoms at all, go home and quarantine yourself and do what you need to do, and be smart about it. If you're around people that have called you the next day and said, I came down positive with COVID, you need to go home even if you're not feeling bad. And that's what I did. And I never was sick, but spent quite a bit of time working out of the house.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you had to be kind of, even though there wasn't always all the information available, a lot of conflicting information, you had to be kind of nimble about your decision making. Nick, was that true for you as well in your company?
Yeah, absolutely. We had to be nimble. We call it the great pivot. It seemed like every other day there was a new angle we had to take with how we handle businesses. And I think, like most of us here in the construction industry, deemed essential was truly important for business all the way through. So thank you for all the associations that fought for that on a national level to keep that open. But I can speak for my business where we accelerated. We got busier, right? And then now you have to combat all the challenges of owners and general contractors and all the different politics that were involved at that level. It was really interesting to see how we managed it. And if you were sick, stay home, right? Or other trade, multi-story projects that we were on were I don't want to call out any particular, but just for a reference, right? If we talk about, if the framers were on a particular floor framing and drywallers on top of it, right? It's, all of a sudden that floor would have an outbreak of cases and it would impact the entire project. So how would you, and then your crews were affected. So how did you manage that challenge and be nimble enough to still keep up with the demand of contracts along the way? Right.
Well, Tom, I bet from a financial standpoint, immediately things came to mind. Where are we headed? What is that going to do to our cash flow? Things like that. Is that what was occurring in those early days with the pandemic for your company?
For sure. So I think for any financial professional in construction, you've got a plan, right? So we went through a slow time, 08, 9, 10 as well. And one of the things we learned coming out of that is you've got to have a plan for when things slow down. So as an example, we had jobs that either terminated or suspended for a while, and that termination or suspension wasn't 30 days. It could be 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. So we ran into a lot of that early on and had to realize, hey, if we're going to stop these jobs, we've got to be able to pick up. We've got to figure out where we are from a cash flow standpoint. I think that really comes down to being prudent, having a prudent business plan, having a strong balance sheet, and be prepared to weather a little bit of that storm. So I think that combined with the fact that our organization took a step back and said, hey, ultimately the health of every single one of these people is more important than the job. The job is always important, and our job is to find a way to get the job done, and we will, and we always do. But to understand that everybody that's involved in the team, the health factor was of major importance, and making sure that we took the steps necessary to make sure that everybody remained healthy and safe, and we'd still find a way to get the job done.
That's great.
Yeah.
You know, Courtney, I know you're working with a subcontractor firm, and one of the things we haven't touched on, but I imagine looking at when this hit, did you guys immediately look at your contracts, your contract language, what was going to resonate, where you might have opportunities for relief? Is that true for you?
Yeah, it was kind of twofold. So the American Subcontractors Association collaborated early with other organizations to find out what the rules were going to be. So that was figuring that out, what's coming down from the government and what the reaction is going to be, and then informing our members to do that. So as a company, Ace Glass, and as a subcontractor, I had to do the same thing. I had to get into all my contracts. I spent probably 4 to 6 hours a day for the first month or so on Zoom calls with multiple industries. You know, we had a lot of experts coming out. The news was changing every day. Yeah. Spent a lot of time, and then reaching out to my customers and collaborating with them to say, what are you seeing? What's your reaction to this? We're hearing the same facts. What does that look like for you on this project? And we have some private work and some public work. So the rules were different on different projects even. And it sometimes even came down to the specific contractor or even their crews and their crew leaders. And then internally, what we looked at was kind of a 4-prong approach. Stay informed. And that's what was mostly my job, is to be on a whole lot of video calls that I would love to have skipped, but needed to know what was going on. Then communicate that to not only my team, but also to my customers and say, here's what I'm seeing and hearing. Then also to encourage my team to say, we can do this. We're going to go through it. We're going to do the best we can. The same thing with my customers. We're on top of it. We're available. My people want to go to work. They don't want to be at home on, getting a good check. They do better on the job site. And then last is just to be flexible and say, hey, this customer wants us off site, so y'all move to a different job site and we'll go get ahead there. Or we had some of our employees were honestly scared to death of this whole deal. Yep. And although that wasn't my personal take on it, I wanted to be sensitive to other people's. And as we see in our country, it's very different opinions on the same facts. And so I didn't want to lose future teammates and opportunities because of today's opinion. So we tried to, best we could, be flexible with our team to say, I'm scared to death, or my wife is, and I want to go home. Okay, if you can work from home, great. If you can't, well, you got this government assistance, thank goodness. Right. Yeah. But as soon as you feel good, get back in here and get to work. So we really worked hard to try to keep our team together to be prepared for the exit from the pandemic.
Well, I love that theme of, elevating the communications level within your own team. And then I also imagine for you talking to your GCs, and for these gentlemen talking to the owners. Tom, what was that like in kind of increasing those communications to your clients?
I think one of the things is, and we talked about this a little bit on the panel today, communication is key, right? So being able to get in front of the owners. And I think with the pandemic, one of the things here is we weren't sure which direction it was going. I think there was so much uncertainty that you'd have a conversation, but you may not solve something, right? So you're trying to figure out how you're going to get through the workforce, how you're going to get the job done, but being able to communicate with the clients, and for us as a GC with our trade contractor partners and all the way down the supply chain to understand our goal is still to find a way to get this job done, but obviously the health and safety of all the people involved are important as well. And if you're working with the right owners, they'll understand that as well. I think that a lot of that comes down to who you're working with and do they have the same understanding you do.
Nick, did you find that true of owners that you were talking to, that they exhibited that flexible kind of mentality, wanted to work on solutions with you, or did you have to do a lot of education?
No, working with owners or general contractors, it was absolutely an understanding that everybody was worried about the health and welfare of each individual, right? Everybody wanted everybody safe and healthy. As this unfolded, nobody knew what the outcomes were going to be or how severe it was going to be. And, what started as, 14 days to stop the curve, right, or flatten the curve, it changed, right?
Yeah.
And every day got worse or better, right? And so being in Southern California, we're still under certain levels of restrictions. And how do we manage those? So I think, to answer your question, everybody was concerned about the health and welfare of all, right? But they still had jobs that they had to be built and they had to be completed. So there was a good understanding all the way through.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that NASBP was involved in, we quickly realized from our producers that being in front of their staff and signing bonds with wet ink signatures and impressing seals was not really going to work in this environment. And so we took on a concerted effort to educate federal agencies, municipalities, and governors about, can you give us some emergency relief? And we had some measure of success. And you had GSA and DOD. Did you find federal agencies, Dan, being alert to the fact that it wasn't going to be business as usual and that you needed to be a little bit more creative and be given a little bit more license to do what you needed to do? Were contracting officers willing to hear you out?
Somewhat. And actually it was kind of surprising for federal agencies. They really did give us more leeway than they normally did. One of the issues that we were coming right up against was mandatory vaccination.
Yep.
And it actually hit the government before it hit us.
Right.
And once they looked around and said there's nobody in the office anymore, they realized that this just wasn't going to work. And they just canceled it. And so we felt pretty good at that point that was not going to spill over into us. But they had a big problem with that. And, they realized what the problems were, and surprisingly, they worked with us very well. They normally don't pivot that quickly.
Right. Right.
But in this case, it was affecting them before it really affected us. And so they saw it firsthand and saw what it was doing. And I think that helped as much as.
Well, I'm very curious if pandemic was a catalyst for greater technology adoption by your firms, or were you already going in that direction, whether it was BIM or other things that you were doing? Courtney, would you like to kind of talk about where technology adoption was with your firm and whether the pandemic was a catalyst?
Yeah, I would say catalyst, accelerator. I mean, we were already looking at things, and I think the best players have already seen, because of labor force issues in general, we've all been looking at solutions. So it was probably serendipitous that we were already in that mode of what do we need to be doing better, and then this hit. And so I think people already were in gear a little bit, versus if we had just been floating along and this had hit and we weren't leaning in, it could have been a lot worse than it is.
Yeah.
I think as a whole, it forced everybody to really hit that technology button, right? How do we can't just, keep going on as business as usual, right? Everybody, the industry as a whole, was forced to be better and embrace technology. And so as a second generation owner of my company, with my brother and my sister, right, we were, being younger, right, we're already embracing technology in ways that most companies in our market space do not. But what this did was it just made everybody look to the next level. And that was really interesting to do. I mean, just think about Zoom meetings. Who knew what Zoom was, right? And it became the way to do business.
Yeah.
And I don't think it will ever go away. There's a lot of value in face-to-face, like this conference, right? It's just, you can have that real dialogue, shake a hand, look at a person, look a person in the eye when you're making a deal, as opposed to, a Zoom meeting where it's maybe a informal, right? But you're talking about things. You don't give it the attention that you would if you're face to face. But I don't think Zoom meetings will ever go away. And I've done a ton of just one-on-one Zoom meetings that have more value than some that I've done with 30 people on it, right? You just end up being quiet because you can't get a
word in.
Right?
Right.
It's frustrating.
Right.
I just wish you'd told me what the stock price was.
Me too.
You could have bought into that in 2019.
Why didn't we all see that coming?
Yeah. Sometimes it's hard to see those things coming. But
It's been so interesting hearing from you guys how you've kind of managed through the pandemic and came through that. I'm really interested to hear what you guys are looking at coming down the road in the next 12 to 24 months. What are you seeing? What are you worrying about? Dan, do you want to take that?
Well, we talked about it up there. We've got labor shortages. We've got price escalations. We've got supply chain problems. There's no shortage of serious issues that we've got to deal with out there. And I'm a big optimist, and I believe that all of this we're going to work it out. It's going to take a little while, and I really believe that we're all going to be better for it on the back end. Anytime we have to go through crisis like this, and it's just, what is the next crisis? There's never been a shortage of crisis going on. And so, but it makes you better. It makes you stronger every time that you go through a problem like that, because it forces you to make company decisions and company policies and all that are better in the long run for the company anyway. And so, it's going to be painful for a little while, but we've been through pain before, and this isn't the last time we're going to go through pain either.
Right.
But I just believe it makes us stronger on the back end and better prepared, better equipped to take care of the next problem.
Well, it's kind of funny. You talk about these challenges. I like to think of contractors as solution providers for the built environment. I'm not even sure contractor is the right word anymore, right? You're coming up with solutions to address a client's problem. And with higher levels of communication, how are you going to get those price escalation clauses in there without having those talks up front, right? Whether it's the GC or the owner or both, really. So that's certainly important. You talked about workforce, and I know AGC has done a lot over the years in that regard. I know ABC has worked on those issues as well. I think all the organizations, CFMA, ASA, maybe talk a little bit about what you're doing now to build that pipeline for the future. Courtney, do you want to kick that off?
We're working with our members just to kind of show we support local efforts. It's typically where it's boots on ground. It's getting trade organizations training, trying to engage high school students and even junior high to think about the trades earlier. It's really training people inside of our industry to speak positively when they go home, when they go to church, when they're out in the community to talk up their job. What we do is amazing. And so if we talk about that, then it becomes contagious a little bit, so that we kind of change the mindset of the trades are a good, profitable, and honorable place to spend a career where you make a difference in the community around you.
Right.
Make a good living while you're doing it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Tom, do you find your company out there in the local community talking up what you do?
We are. So for us, it's really getting into the local high schools. So some of the high schools have magnet programs, right, where you can start to get into the trade, but it's getting into some of the community colleges and some of the other local areas that are very trade heavy, working there, bringing in internships, bringing on folks to work to show them what we do and how proud we are of actually what we're able to build out there. So it's at that high school level, it's really at the community college level, and then it's at the college and university level as well. There's not as many people that are going into construction and architecture and engineering as there used to be. and we've got a gap. I know I can speak for our company as well. We've got a lot of people that are very seasoned, and we've got a lot of people that are very inexperienced. That middle gap, we don't have a lot of folks there, so we're trying to fill that gap. But it's really a grassroots level to get out there as young as you can and let them know construction is a vibrant business, and it's such a great opportunity for all of us to get out there and a great industry.
Well, it's we need to make sure that it is not a well-kept secret and that there's opportunities for everybody, right? And that includes diversity and women as well. Nick, I don't know on that front. You had mentioned that one of your partners is your sister. Am I correct?
We're a family business, right?
Yeah.
So my sister and my brother, my sister's human resource labor compliance. My brother runs operations. We've just kind of gravitated towards our lanes that fits best for us, makes us happy and whole as individuals. But, I think somebody said it earlier, and I there's been so much great conversation, but nobody's mother wants to say that their son or daughter is a ditch digger. Right. So, in the one of the things that we push is how do we sell it sexy? How do we make construction, appealing and attractive to others?
The sizzle, right?
Right. And it's not, in a sense, it's not glamorous to dig a ditch, right? It's not, plumbing is not glamorous in a wall, and it's buried and hidden for a reason. And we recently met with a local council member walking through a construction project, right?
Yeah.
And he had no idea how it all came together. And so again, how do we sell it? How do we sell it sexy to bring it back to a high school student or a middle school student and say, oh yeah, that's cool. I wouldn't mind if my son or daughter did that. And, so you mentioned women, right, in the construction industry. Some of the women that we employ on the field level are highly praised. Laborers, operators, plumbers, apprentices, and so they work in different trades. But man, do they have the grit, right? And they believe in that. And I think it was the Industrial Revolution, right, where you pulled the women into the factories because the men were all at war, right? And how do we, what's that? And somebody probably knows it. That classic picture, with the
Rosie the Riveter.
Rosie the
during
Riveter.
World
there
War
you
II,
go,
right?
right there it is, and sold sexy and iconic for generations, right? And so getting back to construction and making it in a way that we can build something awesome. My daughter and her girlfriends always joke. We've all heard it, probably the dad joke, right? How do we, and so the dad joke in construction is driving down the freeway saying, "Oh, I built that. Oh, I built that." Right? "Oh, my dad built that." Right? Now my daughter's saying it with her friends. So it's funny.
That's great. All right, saying when I travel, I remember the food and the buildings.
Yeah.
So, I think people, if they thought about, when you go around, your memories are like the structures and the churches and the edifices. I mean, that's our world, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, Dan, I know yours is a family company as well. And you've been around for quite some time doing great work. And what have you done kind of bringing in the next generation?
Now we're going to tell old men jokes.
We've advanced from dad jokes to old men jokes.
My dad used to take us every Sunday on the way home. We had to go around and do job site inspections before we could go home and eat lunch after church every Sunday. Every vacation I went to as a kid started off as an AGC meeting, and then we followed on with a vacation. I grew up, been around it forever. We now have just brought in the fourth generation to our company.
Oh, that's fantastic.
My son
Awesome.
and my brother's daughter are both working for us right now and doing a wonderful job. Not necessarily doing things the way I would have, but that takes a lot of getting used to as well. That's hard to watch them come in, and they're doing things totally different. And I'm just trying very hard to stand back and say, okay, that's another perspective. I remember looking at my dad and my grandfather one time saying, what do these old guys do? What do they know? They've got to learn the same way we did. And I'm a big believer that decision making is a learned skill, not a born skill. And so every time they come to me with a question, no, I'm not going to answer that question. You tell me the way you want to do it, and I'll give you my opinion on whether that makes sense or not. But no, first I want to hear the way you're going to do it. I'm not going to work your way through any of this. And so they're coming along, and it's great to see that. And it's always good to be able to pass it down to another generation. I think in a family business, that's the way everybody would like to see it happen. And so having a lot of fun with that. And it's kind of fun watching some of their aggravation.
I bet.
Some of this as well. But they're working their way through it well, and we're enjoying it and very excited to have them on board.
So,
I just wanted to thank everyone for making the time to be on this panel with us. It's been amazing getting to hear your perspectives, both about the pandemic and what we're looking towards in the future. Hopefully we can get all of you back on another podcast sometime. Thanks so much, everyone. And for anyone who's not here watching this live at NASBP's annual meeting, we miss you. We hope you enjoyed the podcast, and hopefully we'll see you next year. Marco Island.
You've been listening to Let's Get Surety. Let me hear your bonding talk. Brought to you by the National Association of Surety Bond Producers. For more information about the NASBP and its members, visit nasbp.org.
Before we go, we just want to thank Allianz Trade again for their generous support in sponsoring this episode of Let's Get Surety. Allianz Trade is the trademark used to designate a range of services provided by Euler Hermes. Euler Hermes is the global leader in trade credit insurance and recognized specialist in the areas of surety, collections, structured trade credit, and political risk. For more information on Allianz Trade Surety, visit their website, referenced in the description.